Hello and welcome. You are now looking at the welcome screen from the Quicken personal financial software being used on the desktop. And you'll notice on the welcome screen that if you have an older version, you'll be asked by Quicken in order to create a new ID. There used to be a time when this software was actually owned by a company called Intuit, and the differences are worth talking about. In the 2016 edition, Quicken was actually owned by the company Intuit, and the software ran on Windows and the Mac. You may notice that the 2017 edition is no longer being advertised as being owned by Intuit. In fact, if you were to go and purchase that edition now, you may not be able to find it. One of the other differences that you may note is that in 2017, Quicken had a separate edition for those who owned rental property. And this was actually run as a separate version of Quicken, and someone would have had to purchase that edition in order to get the conveniences of the menus and the categories. However, as of the recording of this video, Quicken is now a subscription service. And you'll notice that you would be able to go to the Quicken website, you would be able to purchase Quicken home, business, and rental property all in one unit, and you'd be able to purchase by downloading this particular package. The reason for this is that Intuit actually sold the Quicken software to a private equity firm in 2016. That meant then that the company that has always been very closely related to it, Intuit, which actually owns the software TurboTax and QuickBooks, as well as the Mint website, continues to run as a separate entity and separate from Quicken. This is why, depending on which version that you actually have, you may be asked to recreate an ID in order to get started using your desktop software. Now, if that's the case and you have trouble with this process, you'll notice that there is a support number at the bottom of the page, but you can go ahead and get started by creating a new Quicken ID even if you have an Intuit ID already. Once you have created your ID, you will be asked to sign in to the software, and we will do that right now. Now, one final step that you'll be asked to take is you'll be asked to enter, if you have one, an Intuit ID. Now, again, if you don't have one, then you won't need to actually go through this process. But if you have a previous ID that you created with Intuit, maybe you used TurboTax, or maybe you used a previous version of Quicken, you'll need to have that ID ready in order to place into this password box. Now, when you place that password, you'll be asked to create a new password for the Quicken Vault. And so once you create your password, then you'll click OK. Now, one aspect of the process is that you will then be able to set up your mobile application in order to sync with what you're doing on your desktop with Quicken. And in order to do that, you'll need to go through a step on this page, and then you'll click Next. Once you've completed this password process, you will then be ready to start using Quicken. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. Now, in order to keep your business and home finances organized with Quicken, you'll need to note what Quicken does and how long it will do it for you. Now, one of the things that you'll note is that the Quicken Home and Business subscription actually does and is made for separating and categorizing your business expenses, tracking your profit and loss deductions, as well as running your tax statements for your tax professional. Now, what's important to note is Quicken's discontinuation policy in terms of how long they'll be supporting some previous versions of Quicken. And you'll want to make sure that you take a look at your version of Quicken and that you'll note when Quicken will discontinue support for that edition. Obviously, if you purchase their subscription product, it will always be in force as long as your subscription is paid. So if you intend to download some of the information that you'll be getting from online billers into Quicken, this is an important feature of the subscription service that Quicken keeps updated. And as you go forward, you may want to consider the subscription service just for this feature alone, it is a more automated feature than if you're using one of the earlier versions. Of course, as is the case with everything, it is worth having a conversation with your tax professional if this will make things easier for you to deliver to them in order to complete your taxes. However, for keeping track of where your business is versus your personal finances every day, Quicken can be a good way of being able to see at a glance what you have available. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. In this video, we're going to talk briefly about navigating Quicken and some of the features that you're going to find as you use the software. Now, if you go to the file command, you're going to notice that you can actually open a new Quicken file or one that is existing. You can actually copy your Quicken file, and this is the file that you're creating as you enter data. You can set a password for your data file in case someone else is using your PC. You don't want to have anyone else who is altering your data. And then you can be a little more specific and you can set a password for those who would have access to the account, but you don't want them to be able to modify transactions. You can actually back up your Quicken file, and it's actually a good practice to do this every time that you use the software. Before you close, you should actually back up what you have done. And you can actually restore from a backup. So if you have a backup file that you have created, your software isn't working, you can go to your backup file and actually restore what you have done in your work. You can import a file into Quicken, and so there are several areas that you can import data. You can import data from TurboTax and Microsoft Money, as well as previous versions of Quicken. You can export your file. So for example, if you want to use QuickBooks or some other financial software, you can actually do that using the file export command. You have several options of file operations. You can actually put together a year-end copy or a copy of your file, and then all of the other features you'll note would be the same in any other program. Now, one thing that you do want to be aware of is where your file is located on your personal computer. Typically, it's going to be in your Documents folder, but you want to be able to find this folder at will. And if you want to actually back up that file to a cloud drive, you want to be able to find it so that you'll be able to do that. Now, in keeping your finances organized, one of the things that you'll want to do is you'll want to be able to create reports that will tell you certain things when you want to know them based on specific dates. And Quicken can actually do that for you in terms of your banking, in terms of doing comparison, what your balances are, comparing them to where they were some previous period, spending, your taxes, your business, and this will be of particular interest to you if you're trying to keep your personal and your business separate. You'll be able to look at your business at a glance using these reports, and we will actually be focused on these reports in this course. You can actually look at those reports in terms of graphs if you want to do something that's a little more visual. And then they actually have options for you to be able to work with your credit score. So Quicken is actually a way for you to be able to organize your financial activity so that you'll be able to keep your personal life separate from the business and then be able to make good decisions about your business. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Hello and welcome. Now, one of the first things we're going to do to get started is we're going to go to the file command. And as you recall, what we want to do is we want to set the password for the data file. And that means then that only someone with the password can actually use the data file that we're going to be inputting data into. Now, when we click the link, we are given an option to set the custom password. We're going to do that. And then we're going to go ahead and write that password in this dialog box. Now, you do have the option of using the data file without a password, but it's always a good safety measure to actually go ahead and create a password that you are going to remember with the data file. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to click OK. What we're going to do now is we're going to go to the file command. We are then going to set a password to modify transactions. And This is going to give you the ability to make sure that someone who has access to your Quicken account cannot go back and modify transactions. And this means then that you will make sure that your transactions, as you place them in, the software will remain the same. For example, if someone is using the account with you, you don't want them to be able to go back and manipulate transactions in order to change information, in order to reflect something that really did not happen. So we're going to go ahead and click the Set Password to modify transactions. Okay, now once we've done that, we're going to click OK. We're now going to back up our file, and we're going to go to the backup command. Then we're going to click Backup Quicken File. And we're going to be given some information about the file. It's going to be where we designate it. Now we can actually change the directory where we want this backup to be placed, and then we will then click the Backup Now button. And once you have that information, what you can do is you can actually take your backup and you can place it in your cloud drive, just so that you'll have a double measure of safety and security. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video. Welcome back. We are now going to start adding data to our account to reflect our actual financial position. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to the Tools area, and we're going to click Add an Account. Now typically, the first thing we're going to enter will be our cash on hand. And so we want to go ahead and just click this cash button. And we're going to actually just write in here whatever we want to call the cash account. You can call it cash account or cash on hand. Now you will be able to add other cash accounts if there is more than one person who is working with this particular Quicken file. So for example, if you and a significant other are operating your business together, you can actually write in several cash on accounts. So what you can do in that case is just write in where this is. You can then designate primarily how the account is going to be used. And so what we can do is we can then say that this account is going to primarily be used for business, and then we can then click Next. Now typically your best practice is that you're going to start pulling reports. Now typically you're going to start pulling reports at the point at which you create your Quicken account. So you can write in the cash on hand that you have at the point at which you're creating the account. You can either go back in time or you can go back to the beginning of the month. So in this particular case, we're just going to assume that the cash on hand right now is $136. And once you've entered that number, you're then going to click Next. And then you'll have your first account ready inside of Quicken. Now let's say that you actually discover that you have more than $136 when you open the account. And you discover that you had $10 more, and you had that $10 10 days before. So how would we handle that? We then want to look at our account page by going to this link. We then want to open up the business account. And then we want to click on Thomas's cash on hand. We then come to this account page. And what we want to do is we actually want to edit this amount. We want to change this to an earlier date. So we're actually going to change our opening balance as well as our opening date. So let's do that right now. We then go to this opening balance. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to click on the date. We're going to change this now to 10 days earlier. And we're going to walk this to the 5th. And then once we change that date, we are then going to click the Save button. And then we're saying that we're actually going to record a transfer back into the Save account. We're going to click Yes, Save Anyway. Now you'll note that because we're actually going back to change a password, it's going to require us to enter that password that we set up. So we're going to go ahead and put that password in. And then we're going to click OK. And you're going to notice then that the date has then changed to the 5th. What we're also going to do now is we're going to change the amount, and we're just going to click inside of the amount. I'm going to write in the $10 more and make this now $146 that we started with on the 5th. We're going to click Save. And then Quicken's going to give us this warning message. We're going to click Yes. Again, because we are editing a transaction that has actually already occurred, we're going to be required to put that password in again. And we're going to click OK. And you'll notice now that we have changed our cash on hand to the day that we reflected. We know that we had $146. Okay, so with that, thanks, and I will see you in another video.